16 scientists struggled for 2 years. But in just 3 minutes, a secretary revealed an incredible secret that could change everything. Ella tapped her pen nervously against the cluttered desk, surrounded by stacks of papers that told stories of a town hanging by a thread. The weight of her responsibilities pressed heavy on her chest, but for her son Alex, she carried on, fueled by dreams for a brighter future. Every morning, Ella watched as young faces trudged past her office on their way to dead-end jobs, their spirits as low as the sun-drenched horizon overhead. Burdened yet hopeful, she stayed close to the team of 16 scientists pouring their hearts into a revolutionary renewable energy project that could shine a ray of hope over the rusting machinery of their town. Days melded into years, though, as rejections and setbacks piled as high as the dust in the corners of her office. When Ella stumbled upon that old archive last week, it felt like destiny. It was dense with forgotten data, potential waiting to be unleashed. A thrill rushed through her as she deciphered the information that could fuel their project, could amplify their efforts tenfold. But even as excitement bloomed, doubt crept in, whispering that a mere secretary couldn't claim victory over minds adorned with PhDs. The meeting, Ella's heart raced. She stepped forward to present her findings, gripping the edge of the podium like a life buoy. A quick glance around the room shattered her confidence. The scientists, with their sophisticated lab coats and impressive accolades, wore skeptical looks that cut deeper than she could have imagined. The tension was palpable, it suffocated the air. One of them, a tall man with a furrowed brow, tapped his pen dismissively, making it clear her voice was undeserving of notice. She felt the dreams she had nurtured for herself and Alex crashing down like fragile glass, a cascade of uncertainty, but just then, as doubt simmered, something within her ignited. A spark of courage flared, challenging their expectations. "I may be just a secretary," she began, voice steadying, "but I understand this town, I know its heart." The words poured out, each sentence brighter and louder than the last, wrapping around the hopeful aspirations of the townsfolk like vines from a blooming garden. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The air crackled with tension, the gaze of the room shifting as Ella's voice rang clear. Would they see her, recognize the voice of their community echoing through her passion? Some remained skeptical, walls built by elitism blocking their view, but whispers of understanding began to ripple through the crowd. She glimpsed Alex outside the door, his cherubic smile cutting through her fears like sunlight breaking through clouds. Hope flickered anew, bolstered by the possibility of change. She stood at the edge of transformation, ready to go beyond what society said she could be. Ella felt the weight of that moment. Would she shatter the chains binding them to conformity? Could they recognize her truth, the hope they desperately sought? The room was crackling with tension, but despite the odds, Ella's heart swelled. The potential to ignite something far greater swirled in the air. It was just a matter of time, the world was about to awaken. Ella could feel the pulse of the room, a rhythm she sensed in her bones. She took a deep breath, her heart racing in sync with the flickering hope surrounding her. "I know what this project means," she continued, her voice stronger now. "It's not just about energy, it's about our future. It's about my son and every child in this town who deserves a chance to dream beyond their circumstances." As she spoke, she watched the scientists shift uneasily in their seats. One or two exchanged glances. Perhaps they were questioning if they had overlooked something essential. Ella leaned in, urgency surging through her. "This isn't just a scientific endeavor, it's a lifeline. We've all felt the weight of despair. We've all watched good people struggle while potential sits quietly within reach. We can change that together." Gradually, the atmosphere began to shift. Ella could sense that a few were starting to lean forward, intrigued despite themselves. The tall man who had dismissed her before lowered his pen slowly. There was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, and her heart soared at the small triumph. She pressed on, every word crafted with intention. This knowledge could elevate us. We can harness the wind, the sun, things that don't just represent energy but symbolize a new dawn for us all. As her speech wrapped around the room, she looked out to see Alex peeking in through the door. His small frame practically glowed with wonder, and it ignited an unshakable fire within her. That moment was not just about proving her worth, it was about proving to him that anything is possible when you fight for it. Ella had shared her heart, and whether it was enough to change minds, she wouldn't stop believing. Finally, the tall scientist stood, imposing yet curious. "You make a compelling argument," he said slowly, measuring his words as if reassembling the shattered pieces of his previous resistance. "However, this data requires scrutiny. It's ambitious, but are you confident about its viability?" His tone challenged Ella, not harshly, but with an expectation that brought her emotions bubbling to the surface. "I have faith," she replied, the tremor in her voice overshadowed by resolve. "Faith in the potential for change. Faith in each of you. If we can come together, even with our different backgrounds, we can create something incredible." The silence that followed was thick, like fog swallowing the morning light. Ella's chest tightened as she awaited their response. The seconds felt like hours, but she stood steadfast, her determination a beacon amidst the uncertainty. At last, a ripple of murmurs coursed through the group. Some heads nodded, others remained skeptical, yet what she had ignited felt monumental. This dialogue, this tension was the first step. She knew they were contemplating, weighing their fears against the flicker of possibility she had lit, and then, just as the mood began to shift towards something beautiful, the lab door swung open. A figure stepped inside, unexpected but instantly familiar. It was George, the head scientist of the team who had been ironically unapproachable up until now. His mere presence could halt conversations. He looked straight at Ella, and the room fell into a hush, all eyes darting between them. Her stomach twisted, anticipation clawing at her insides. "What if," he began, breaking the silence with a deep, thoughtful tone, "we delved even deeper into this data? What if we examined this so-called potential together?" Suddenly, the power went out. The lights flickered, shadows danced on faces frozen in surprise. An overwhelming tension wrapped around them, amplifying the urgency in the air. In that moment, an undeniable question hung over everyone: were they about to choose to dive into this uncharted territory together, or would fear push them back into the shadows? Ella's heart raced. The power surge was not just a blackout, it felt symbolic, a challenge, perhaps, from the very heart of the town. What lay ahead seemed uncertain, but one thing was crystal clear: this was just the beginning. She took a step forward, her resolve burning bright, ready to harness whatever darkness lay before them. But as Ella reached for the dim light of inspiration, she wondered if the next moment would catapult her and the scientists into the future, or plunge them deeper into the abyss. Would they unite, or divide further? The fate of their town was tightening like a noose, with hope and despair teetering on the edge. The darkness swallowed the room whole, leaving everyone momentarily disoriented. Ella's heart beat louder than the silence. A hum of confusion rippled through the group, some people fumbled awkwardly, their chairs scraping against the floor as they adjusted to the unexpected turn of events. Anxiety danced in the air, thick and heavy, but she could not let it devour her resolve. "Stay calm," Ella urged, her voice cutting through the uncertainty. "We can work through this." As her words hung in the air, she turned toward the door where she had spotted George standing. She couldn't read his expression in the low light, but she could sense a mix of curiosity and apprehension swirling around him. Was he still on their side? Would he grasp this moment as a turning point, or would the darkness spur him to retreat into the safety of skepticism? A distant flicker tormented her. Was it a malfunction or a sign? She didn't have the luxury of pondering as whispers began filtering through the crowd, a blend of hope and fear. "We should regroup," someone said, and Ella pivoted toward the voice, a woman in a lab coat whose name she couldn't recall. "The generators will kick back in, right?" "Yes," George replied, his voice steady. But this might take a moment. We need to be prepared for what comes next. The murmur of people shuffled around her. Ella could feel sticky heat creeping into the room, making her feel restless. They had embarked on a collective journey toward change, only now it felt fragile, like a spider's web threatening to tear apart. But Ella saw a glimmer of possibility. Their thoughts were not entangled yet, they were simply unchained by darkness. "Let us use this time," she proposed, gripping the edge of the table for support. "Let us talk about what we believe in. We don't need lights to visualize our goals." The scientists hesitated, unsure of themselves in this darkened space. They had come to rely on complex data and calculations, blinded by logic. But Ella knew that their true strength lay beneath the numbers. It was bound in their shared dreams, in their hope for a brighter tomorrow. As the words rolled off her tongue, she remembered the promise she had made to Alex. It was not just the science, it was the heart of human connection, the gasps of wonder that fueled innovation. She felt the weight of every child, every family, and a newfound energy ignited inside of her. "Together, we have visions," she said, her voice gaining momentum. "Think of every child that needs this project. Imagine the possibilities if we partner our skills with our hearts." She could hear murmurs rippling through the group again, some nodding, others visibly unsure. The room felt charged. Even in the darkness, it seemed her words were lighting candles within their minds. Then out of the corner of her eye, she noticed George stepping forward. "Ella, you're right," he said slowly. "We've been too focused on the data and lost sight of why we started this. This could be what pulls us together." In that instant, a low hum echoed through the room. The generator sputtered and whirred back to life, light flickering to life as the bulbs illuminated the faces around her. No longer shrouded in shadow, they looked bright and determined. Hope surged like electricity, she could feel it coursing through everyone present, but just as Ella began to breathe easier, the lights flickered again, momentarily dimming before returning stronger. It felt like a dance between despair and revival. That brief moment cast a shadow over her renewed sense of purpose, and an uncomfortable thought surfaced: was this fragile hope worth the risk? She rushed to quell the anxiety rising in the room. "We're still here. This is a sign we can persist." The air vibrated with uncertainty and resilience as each scientist exchanged a glance, the momentum shifting in a palpable way. They were ready to reevaluate their fears and their dreams. They were standing at the edge, looking down into a void that held both potential and pitfalls, but then, a knock echoed from the back of the lab, silent but piercing through the pooling tension. All eyes turned toward the sound. What was behind that door? This is it, Ella thought, breath held tight. Now we'll find out if we embrace the light or allow ourselves to get lost in the darkness again. The knock reverberated, its rhythmic sound slicing through the air like a clear bell in a fog. Ella's heart raced, each beat echoing with a sense of urgency. The group held their breath, eyes wide with anticipation and tension. George stepped closer to the door, a mix of curiosity and wariness etched on his features. "What if it's an intruder?" someone whispered, barely audible yet striking a nerve in the collective fear. "No, it's not. It's someone here," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We need to find out what this is." Ella stepped forward, willing herself to be brave. She reached out and placed a hand on George's arm. "Open it. We need to face whatever is there together." He hesitated, glancing back at the group for reassurance. She could see him contemplating the gravity of that decision, the weight of what lay beyond that door. But then he took a deep breath, and with a steady motion, turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. A woman stood there, her silhouette barely visible in the soft glow from the emergency exit sign at the far end. The tension in the room shifted, morphing from anxious suspense into a palpable curiosity, drawing everyone closer to the threshold. "Dr. Carter." The woman spoke, her voice breaking the silence like a whisper of wind. "I've been looking for you." Ella's palms felt slick against the cool surface of the table as she focused on the newcomer. The woman stepped into the room, confidence radiating from her every inch. It was a familiar figure, the secretary who had been steadfastly organizing the team's work these past 2 years. But now, she seemed charged with a new energy. "What is going on?" Ella asked, curiosity piqued. "I have something important to share," she said, glancing around at the ensemble of scientists. The weight of the moment hung thick in the air. Something that could change everything. The room buzzed with anticipation. Lights flickered overhead, bathing the group in a nervous glow as Ella refocused on the secretary. "Just a few moments ago, I received a message. There's been movement in the higher offices. They're reconsidering your project," the woman explained, her eyes glinting with hidden truths. "Reconsidering? How? Why?" George interjected, wrestling with the sudden influx of hope. "They've had reports. They've seen the numbers. But they're also aware of the potential you all harness. They want to see more, hearing some fresh perspectives." Ella felt a spark ignite inside her, a mix of disbelief and excitement stirred. Could this really be happening? Was it possible that after months of struggle, someone finally understood the essence of their work? Are they willing to fund it? A trembling voice broke through the rest of the murmurs. The secretary hesitated, her expression slightly faltering. "There are conditions. They want to see narratives. Emotional connections. They want to hear the stories behind the data." "What stories?" Ella asked, her heart beating faster. "We've shared our goals, the importance of our research. It's all there." "No," the woman replied, shaking her head. "They want more than graphs and percentages. They're looking for the human element." A weighty silence enveloped them as the reality sunk in. Could they pull this off? Could they present their project not just as a series of numbers, but as a lifeline that could change lives? Ella's mind raced. She glanced at George and back at the team, reading the rising determination in their faces. This was a challenge they could embrace. "Then let us do it," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Let us weave our narrative into the project we've built. We can inspire them." But as she spoke, another knock sounded at the door the opposite side. The sturdy thud sliced through the air once more, sending a chill through her, different this time. Ella's stomach churned. What lay beyond this second door? "Do we open it?" Someone whispered, glancing nervously around. Ella took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment crescendo. They stood on the brink, poised to grab opportunity or embrace fear. "Are we ready?" she asked, heart pounding. And with that weighty question lingering, she stepped toward the door, bracing herself for whatever awaited on the other side. Ella's hand trembled as she reached for the door handle again. The world outside this room felt fraught with possibilities, but also dangers she could not fully predict. Around her, the faces of her colleagues hovered between fear and determination. They were all in this together, and the atmosphere buzzed with urgency. She pushed the door open slowly, holding her breath as it creaked wider. This time, the air felt electric, a stark contrast to the stale scent of their cramped workspace. The corridor stretched infinitely, and every little shadow seemed to dance menacingly. "Is anyone there?" Ella called out, her voice echoing back at her. The uncertainty gnawed at her, expectations climbed like a leaky balloon about to burst. Just then, from the shadows emerged a figure. It was a man, dressed sharply in a suit that seemed a world apart from the t-shirts and lab coats they usually wore. His eyes were intense, scanning the room and lingering longer than necessary on Ella. "We need to talk," he said, his tone clipped. "About what?" George asked, stepping protectively in front of Ella, and the rest of the group followed suit. "It's about your research," the man replied, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "I've been sent to assess your project further." There's a chance to turn everything around if he paused, the weight of his next words choking the air around them. "If you're willing to share the full story behind what you've created." Ella's heart surged. This was the moment she had been waiting for, but there was an insistent knot in her stomach. What do you mean by the full story? We've provided you with everything on the surface. The man shifted his stance, looking every bit the part of a corporate decision-maker. They want to know why this matters. They need to connect with it, understand the stakes. It's not just data to them, it's lives at risk. People affected. Emotion, motivation, you get it, right? Suddenly, the implications of the secretary's news became frighteningly clear. This would not just be a presentation of their work, it would be a journey through their passion, their struggles, their dreams. Could they be that vulnerable? Lives are at stake here, Ella reiterated, fire blazing in her eyes. She thought of the faces they had studied, the families they aimed to help. We can do this. We need to believe that if we craft our presentation with heart, it will resonate with them. It has to. The man nodded, a flicker of respect in his gaze. Exactly. But you'll have to move fast. The higher-ups won't wait forever. You have 3 days until the next board meeting. A ripple of murmurs ran through the group. 3 days. It felt absurd and exhilarating all at once. The project had been their lives, and now it could transform into a lifeline for others if they got it right. I'm in, George declared, raising his hand as if he could physically grasp the opportunity. One by one, the team echoed their pledges, passion and commitment flashing across their faces, but as hope surged among them, Ella's mind raced. Using narratives meant digging deeper than numbers. It meant tearing down layers of their personal stories and insecurities. Before she could express her doubts, the urgency of their task returned. Let us brainstorm tonight, Ella said, determination solidifying in her chest. We'll gather everything we have, the data, the stories, the emotions. Everything. The group nodded, eyes brightening with purpose. They turned back toward the table, ready to pour their hearts into their work, and just as the air filled with a surge of renewed hope, another knock came, sharp and unexpected. It was a different sound, one that carried a sense of foreboding. Another visitor? Someone whispered, the group freezing in place. Ella exchanged anxious glances before moving toward the door yet again. What awaited them beyond that threshold? Could this be another opportunity or the challenge that would test everything they had just pledged to accomplish? With her heart racing, she gripped the handle tighter, knowing that whatever was coming could change everything they fought for. Ella hesitated, the door handle cool against her palm. Her mind spun with the possibilities. What if this visitor brought bad news? What if they were here to shut them down? But something pushed her forward. With a deep breath, she swung the door open. The hallway was dim, but 2 figures stood there, cloaked in shadows. One was a tall woman, her long hair pulled back into a tight bun, wearing glasses that glinted under the flickering overhead light. The other was a short man, his tie slightly askew, a nervous energy radiating from him. We need to talk, the woman said, her voice authoritative yet strangely gentle. Is this about the board meeting? Ella asked, cautious. Partially. The woman gestured for the team to step aside so they could enter the lab. There is something you need to know. The stakes are higher than you realize. As they gathered around, Ella's heart sank. She had hoped for support, not more complications. The man stepped forward. Look, we've gone through the initial data you provided. It's impressive, but the board, they might not support your project as is. Ella felt her breath catch. What do you mean? They're looking for more than statistics, the woman explained, her tone shifting from commanding to earnest. They want to hear the stories, real, human stories. You need to show them the faces behind the data. Ella turned to her colleagues, their faces mirroring her own mixture of fear and hope. We know we have to dig deeper. But will they really listen? Last time we presented, it felt like we were just numbers on a screen. The woman leaned closer, her gaze steady. This time, make it personal. Share why you do this work. They want connection, not just information. The room grew heavy with unspoken worries as Ella considered the weight of their task. Could they muster the courage to be so exposed? In that moment, George stepped forward, clenching his fists. We owe it to the people we've studied. If we can show how this research impacts real lives, not just data points, but real hopes and struggles, maybe we can truly make a difference. Ella nodded slowly, feeling a flicker of determination in her chest. We have to do it. We need to be brave enough to share our stories. The woman smiled slightly, as if relieved to see their shift in mindset. You have 36 hours. Use them wisely. I promise you, if you give them your heart, they'll remember it long after the presentation. But be careful. There will be those who will not understand. What does that mean? Someone murmured. It means not everyone will be on your side, she replied, her brow furrowing. You need to watch your backs. You are about to open up a path that could threaten powerful interests. With that ominous remark hanging in the air, the room fell silent. Ella's heart raced. This was suddenly much more than just a presentation about their research. This was about survival. As the woman and man made their way to the door, Ella spoke up one last time. Thank you. We will rise to this challenge. As they closed the door behind them, Ella turned to her team, their expressions a mixture of determination and concern. All right, let us get to work. We have stories to tell, and this time, we won't hold back. The urgency in the room surged, igniting their spirits, but the foreboding sense of danger loomed over them like a dark cloud. In the end, would their passion be enough? Just as they began to gather around the table, brainstorming ideas and dividing tasks, another knock echoed through the lab. The sound silenced their enthusiasm, a chill creeping into the air. What now? George whispered, their previous confidence waffling. Ella exchanged worried glances with her team. I guess we'll find out, she replied, dread pooling in her stomach. Would this next visitor complicate their fragile momentum or offer another lifeline when they needed it most? Ella moved cautiously to the door, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. With a deep breath, she turned the knob and opened it to reveal another figure, a man, his shoulders broad and his expression unreadable. He stood awkwardly, shifting his gaze from Ella to the team gathered behind her. Can I help you? Ella asked, unsure of what kind of turbulence this new visitor might bring. I'm sorry to intrude, he said, his voice steady but soft. I'm from the HR department. He paused, glancing at the small group, the tension among them palpable. My name is Tom. I'm here about the concerns that were raised last week regarding, well, your research project. Ella's stomach dropped. Concerns? What kind of concerns? Tom stepped forward, lowering his voice slightly, as if the hushed tone would somehow soften the impact of his words. Regarding the ethical implications of your study. Some people feel it's too invasive, that it crosses a line. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the team. Emma, one of the junior researchers, shook her head. But we're bringing awareness. We're shining a light on issues that need to be addressed. Tom nodded, understanding the urgency behind her words. I get that. But the higher-ups are worried about the backlash. They're urging you to tighten your narrative, to focus on safe data rather than the personal stories. They believe it will lessen the risks both to you and the institution. Wait a minute, George interjected, his face flushed. You're saying they want us to water it down? To take away what makes this work meaningful? Ella felt the weight of the room's disappointment settle on her shoulders. No, that can't be the solution. Our mission is to give a voice to those who've been silenced. We can't compromise that. Not now. Tom sighed, his eyes sincere but heavy with the burden of his role. I'm just the messenger here. But I assure you, people within the organization fear what this could mean for future funding, for stability. It's not just about this presentation, it's a broader concern. Have they even seen the impact your work has? Ella shot back, frustration bubbling over. This is about real lives, real stakes. We can't hide behind data if we want change. Tom hesitated, taking in the palpable passion swirling in the small room. I believe in what you're doing, I really do. But I suggest you tread carefully. The higher-ups are in a defensive posture because they've been under scrutiny. If you push back without a solid plan, you might jeopardize everything. They exchanged glances, uncertainty gnawing at their resolve. Ella could almost hear the clock ticking down. Their 36 hours were slipping away, and with every word, the stakes appeared to rise. Would their brave telling of human stories end up as just a casualty in a corporate struggle fueled by fear? Thank you for letting us know, Ella finally said, her voice firm yet wavering as she turned to her team. We have work to do. But before we dive into this, we need to talk about how we can make our point without losing sight of our mission. As they began discussing strategies to weave their stories into something that would still resonate, a sense of urgency emerged in the room, filled with a commitment to authenticity against the backdrop of pressure and doubt. Just at that moment, another knock echoed in the hallway. It shattered their burgeoning focus, sending a jolt of anxiety through the group once more. Ella's heart raced. Is this another challenge or perhaps an ally? She murmured, a sense of foreboding washing over her. Should we open it? The room held its collective breath as they awaited whatever came next. Would it be an opportunity that would help them find their voice, or would it lead them further into the tangled web of uncertainty? The door creaked open, and Ella's heart sank further. A woman stepped inside, her eyes wide with urgency. She was familiar, Ellen, one of the editorial staff known for her tireless commitment to socially conscious storytelling. Ella! Thank goodness, Ellen exclaimed, quickly closing the door behind her. I heard you were in here. I need to talk to you about the project, the research, the data. It's urgent. Urgent how? Ella asked, her brow furrowing. They're planning to impose rigid edits on your presentation. I'm talking serious restrictions. If you don't act fast, they'll have the final say on what gets shared. It could end up not representing your original vision at all. Ella felt a rush of adrenaline. Why? What's behind this? Ellen leaned closer, her voice dipping into a whisper. There are people in the organization who believe your findings could attract unwanted attention. They think it's too provocative. If the corporate sponsors get spooked, they might pull support. We can't let that happen. Every word landed like a bomb. It wasn't just about the project anymore, it was about their entire mission, about standing up for those who couldn't. That's unacceptable. George interjected, his voice trembling with emotion. We put in the work to uncover the truth. We can't just let them cut our legs out from under us. Ellen nodded in agreement. Exactly. But it means you need a counter-strategy. It's now or never. You have to gather your stories and highlight the human element, make it irrefutable. We need to show them what's at stake. Ella felt the fire reignite within her. We could shift our focus. If we highlight personal narratives more prominently, maybe they won't see us as a threat. At the same time, we can keep those compelling statistics that lend credibility. Emma, her eyes glistening with determination, pitched in, and we can overlay those narratives with visuals that capture the emotionality of what we've discovered. Bring it alive. Exactly, Ella said, feeling the momentum shift back in their favor. If we put faces to the research, they won't be able to dismiss us. We need to respect the voices of our subjects. As they began brainstorming, a spark lit the room. Just then, another knock interrupted, this one more insistent. Ella felt her chest tighten. They had barely gathered their thoughts, and another curveball was coming. We can't keep answering the door. Who is it this time? More bad news? George said, panic threading his tone. What if it's someone who can help? Ella responded, her courage faltering for a moment but then surging back. We can't let fear dictate our actions. Taking a deep breath, Ella turned toward the door once more, gripping the knob. This time, she felt the weight of her choices resting not just on her shoulders but on everyone in the room. "Are we ready?" she asked, glancing back at her team, uncertainty racing through her veins. The silence hung thick as they nodded, their collective resolve carving through the tension. Ella opened the door. Standing there was a figure from her past, one she never thought would walk back into her life. "Ella," the person said simply, a mixture of familiarity and fear in their eyes. As her heart raced, she could almost hear it echo, "What truth will they bring?" Ella felt the room shift, a blend of anxiety and hope washing over her. Would this be the ally they needed or the final test of their fight? As Ella stared into the face of the visitor, disbelief settled in like a thick fog. The last time she had seen Jason, they had parted ways with heavy hearts, their friendship severed by ambitions and misunderstandings. Now, there he was, standing on the threshold, urgency bubbling just beneath the surface of his composed exterior. "Jason," Ella breathed, her voice tinged with a mix of surprise and trepidation. "I know this isn't the best time for a reunion," he said, his tone steady but laced with an undercurrent of unease. "I heard about what's going on. I had to come." George shifted behind Ella, the tension in his posture palpable. "What do you know?" he snapped, defensive instincts kicking in. Jason raised his hands in a calming gesture. "I'm not here to cause problems. I've been following the news around your project, and I know there are forces working against you. I might have a lead on who's behind the pressure." Ella felt her heart quicken. The mention of forces was intimidating. "What do you mean? Who?" "It's complicated," Jason said, glancing toward the door as if he feared someone overhearing, "but I have a contact inside the board. People are concerned about the implications of your research." Ellen, unable to hold back any longer, chimed in, "Implications? You mean they're scared of the truth?" "Exactly," Jason replied, his voice thickening. "The higher-ups fear losing their funding, and they think your findings could destabilize their cozy relationships with sponsors. You could be up against more than just editorial edits." A heavy silence descended as those words hung in the air. Ella felt a sense of betrayal creeping in. The truth was being suppressed, all for profit. "But we can't let them silence us," Emma said, her voice filled with fierce determination. "If your contact has information, we need to know everything." "I can set up a meeting," Jason said, his expression earnest. "But it's risky. If they find out I'm talking to you, it could jeopardize everything, not just for me, but for you too." Ella weighed his words. Her mind raced, grappling with the potential fallout, but her resolve wasn't wavering. They had worked too hard to back down now. "Do it," she said firmly, her heart racing with the weight of the decision. As Jason agreed to make the call, the atmosphere shifted. Ella looked around her team, seeing the fire igniting in their eyes, a unified force ready to stand against the tide. But just as hope threatened to bloom, her phone buzzed violently on the table, the screen lighting up with an incoming call from the one person she wished to avoid, the project director. Her hand shook as she reached for it, a wave of anxiety washing over her. "What do I say?" "Just be honest," Ellen urged, "but watch your words. This could tip the scales one way or another." Nervously, Ella answered, dialing back her breath. "Hello? Ella, we need to talk," came the voice on the other end, cold and unwavering. "I have some news that will affect your project." Panic clasped her heart. What could possibly complicate things further? "Can't we discuss this later?" Ella asked, her voice trembling but firm. "No. You need to hear this now." There was a pause, then the chilling words hit her, "We're reconsidering your position." Ella's hand went clammy against the phone, heart thundering in her chest. She glanced at her team, now more uncertain than ever. As she listened, a swirl of emotions tightened around her, a mix of fear, defiance, and the burning need to protect the truth they had fought so hard to uncover. But how far would they have to go? "What can I do?" Ella asked, steeling herself for whatever was about to come. "Just follow our instructions, or everything you've built could come crumbling down." The call ended abruptly, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. Ella felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. What would she sacrifice to keep their truth alive? She turned to her team, their expressions mirroring her own internal turmoil. "What's our next move?" she asked, determination blazing in her eyes, but even as she spoke, a new fear gnawed at her. What if the fight cast shadows too dark to escape? The door of truth was open, but how many more would have to pass through before they found a way out? Ella felt like she was standing at the edge of a precipice, gazing down into an abyss that threatened to swallow them whole. The call had wrecked her, planting seeds of doubt where hope had sprouted just moments before. The weight of the project director's words echoed in her mind, mixing with the urgency of the ticking clock. "We can't afford to back down," George urged, voice steady but edged with anxiety. "Think of everything we've worked for." "Yes," Emma chimed in, her eyes brightening. "We need to tell our story. That's how we turn this around." But as her team rallied, Ella faced a looming truth: they needed more than passion, they needed the tools to ensure their voices were not just heard but felt. She took a deep breath and organized her thoughts with purpose, feeling the adrenaline surge. "Everyone, let us brainstorm. We need compelling narratives that capture our mission, the human element." As they gathered around, exchanging ideas fueled by both frustration and determination, Ella felt the spark of collective hope igniting brighter. They split into pairs, focused on gathering snippets of personal stories, connecting with those they had interviewed, asking for insights about their struggles and dreams. Time ticked slowly. The atmosphere buzzed electric with creativity, with memories surfacing that stirred emotions long buried. Ella caught a glimpse of Alex's drawing on the wall, a small tree reaching up towards the sky. She promised herself that the work they were doing would give kids like him a chance to dream bigger. The clock flashed 30 minutes to midnight when the door creaked open. The familiar figure of Jason stepped in, concern etched into his features. "I set up a meeting," he announced, eyes darting between the group. "The contact wants to meet before the board meeting tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Ella's heart raced, excitement crackling through her like static. "What's the plan?" "We need to be strategic." Jason's voice steadied the room. "We highlight our findings, but focus on the human impact. Make it personal. They need to feel it." As the night wore on, Ella could see the pieces falling into place. They shared stories, weaving a colorful tapestry in contrast to the stark numbers: the man who had lost his job but found a spark in a community energy program, the child who dreamed of a bright, clean future, the elderly woman who relied on a sustainable energy source to live independently. When dawn broke, it cast a warm light across their table, illuminating the colorful collection of narratives scrawled across sheets of paper. It painted a picture of resilience, not just in numbers but a beating heart. The team stood ready. They packed documents, breathing life into the stats that would now carry personal tales. Ella felt a rush of adrenaline, her fears melted away as she caught a glimpse of the strength in unity. When they finally walked into that boardroom, the air was thick with anticipation, but they were not backing down. Ella looked at each face, those weary yet determined colleagues beside her. They had come to ignite a spark of hope, to stand for truth no matter the cost. As the meeting unfolded, they shouldered their stories into the air, voices rising and falling like a passionate song. Listeners leaned forward, intrigued and captivated, some even wiping away tears as the stories poured forth. Ella's heart raced. Every word was not just a plea for funding, but a command for recognition, a push for humanity. She locked eyes with the contacts who had initially doubted her, and she could feel their skepticism wrestle with the weight of truth. After hours that felt like mere minutes, a collective silence filled the room as the final story concluded. Ella felt the pulse of their hope reverberate as uncertainty hung like a veil, waiting for the board to deliberate. Moments stretched as they faced the judgment that could decide their fate. Then, the head of the board cleared his throat. "Thank you for your passion and dedication," he began, forking the air with authority. "We need this connection you've created between numbers and human lives. We see your potential, and we want to support your project." Ella staggered, emotion flooding her senses like a flowing river breaking its dam. The word sank in, melding with the sense of relief rushing through her. As the applause burst forward, the scientists and Ella felt the chains of doubt shatter, replaced by the birth of shared dreams anew. The journey was far from over, but they had taken a major step not just for themselves but for everyone they represented. Hours later, Ella found herself sitting at home, surrounded by overstuffed folders and weathered papers. Alex peeked inside, curious about her day. She ruffled his hair, a radiant smile blossoming on her face. "Guess what? We did it." His eyes lit up. He believed in her, just as she had believed in the power of hope. From that day forward, they became guardians of stories, the stories that light the path toward a brighter future. Each tale became a beacon, illuminating lives, igniting families, and changing a town trapped in the shadows of despair. In this fight for truth, she knew there would be more struggles ahead. But together, they had proven one undeniable truth: when people dare to stand up and speak with their hearts, change is possible, and that change could spark a revolution. And as the sun set brightly over the horizon that evening, Ella stood hand in hand with her son, bearing witness to a new dawn filled with hope. Now, it's your turn to join this journey. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive stories that will inspire you even more. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm, because every little bit helps. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this ending. It matters more than you know. Show your support, and let's spark a revolution together.